Hi there, it's Bonnie with So Inspired by Bonnie with another Tuesday's tip. So I'm going to go refresh the computer and make sure we have everyone here. And if you are here, be sure to give me a shout out, say hi, or give me some love or a like. And I see that we are here. So I'm going to give everybody a little bit of time to show up. Today what we're going to discuss is, fabric organization for large portions as well as small cuts, so that you can find that piece of fabric you bought maybe several years ago when you want to, instead of wasting your whole sewing session on trying to find fabric. So I see some folks are starting to show up. Hi Donna, I see you say I'm here, and Sandy's here from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Is it cold there? We're having really nice weather here lately. It's gorgeous here in Texas. But as I said, we're going to discuss fabric organization. I did do an in-depth video on the method I'm going to mention today on my YouTube channel, and I will post a link to that. As a reminder, if you're not on our newsletter, please go sign up for our newsletter at www.soinspiredbybonnie.com. Be sure to share this video with a friend, let them know, and I'd love to hear your comments. And if we have any questions, we will answer those questions at the end of the video. I'll just kind of do my thing on the Tuesday's tips, and we'll answer questions at the end. If you are not able to be with us live, then I will repost this video on the Facebook page, so it'll always be here. It will also be on our YouTube channel, and it will also be on our Pinterest page. So hopefully no one will miss it. But again, feel free to share the video and invite your friends on in. So the more the merrier, I say. So again, we're going to discuss fabric organization and how to keep your collection neat and tidy so that you can find what you need when you need it, instead of wasting your whole sewing session trying to locate the fabric. I see several more have shown up, so we're going to go ahead and get started. As I mentioned early on, if you're just now showing up, I do have an in-depth video demonstrating the method I'm going to use, which is rolling your fabric on a ruler. I do have a video on YouTube, and I will post that video up in the up above at the end when we're all done with this Tuesday's tip. So basically, I'll give you a little synopsis. Basically, what you're going to do, excuse me, I have a little cold, so if I cough in the middle of this or need a drink, that's the reason why. I apologize in advance, but I know it's probably coming. What you're going to do, the down and dirty version of this, is you're going to take your yardage that you get from the fabric store, and you're going to roll it around a ruler. And then when you get to the end of wrapping that around the ruler, now if you're a pre-shrinker, I recommend that you wash your fabric first before doing this. But then you're going to wrap it around that ruler. You just keep folding it around the ruler until you get it all wrapped up. And then I like to fold under the raw edge when I'm done. So here's a piece that's been folded on a ruler. It's been wrapped around several times. I get to the end, and then I tuck under the raw edge, and I like to take a bobby pin. Now, it used to be that I thought I really liked these large bobby pins. I get these at Sally's Beauty Supply. They are rust resistant. I've not had any problems with them whatsoever rusting, none. And I've been doing this method for over 9 years now, and they've worked beautifully for me. I've also, since I first started, when I first started, that's all I used was the big, they're almost 3 inches large. And that's solely what I used. And then I ran out of bobby pins, and couldn't, you know, they were out too. So then I started using some smaller bobby pins, and they work really well also. I think many years ago, when my mother first used bobby pins, they may have rusted more than they do the current version of bobby pins today. I know I've had several people have voiced concerns about using the bobby pins, and personally I've not had any issues. Again, I store all my fabric in the house. I live in a humid climate. I live in Dallas, Texas. So we are humid, but I don't store my fabric out in the garage. I think storing fabric out in the garage is not the kindest way to store your fabric. It's probably a little rough just being out in the garage in the heat and the humidity all the time, 24/7. Anyway, we don't store our clothes out there ordinarily. They're ordinarily in our closet. So that's how I like to store my fabric. So anyway, once you've done that, your fabric is going to be, like I said, it's going to be rolled up like this, and then I just fold it in half, and then it's ready for storage. Now, how do you figure out what size you need? What I do is I take my cabinet, and I quickly measure the inside. This one happened to be 22.5 inches. So I had both a 6-inch wide ruler and a 5-inch wide ruler. And I wanted to stuff as much of my collection in these cabinets as I possibly could. So if I used the 6-inch ruler, I would have only been able to have 3 across, because 3 times 6 is 18. And that wasn't enough to get in that 4th section. And I found that if I used the 5-inch ruler, that gave me a little play, because 4 times 5 is 20, and I have 22.5 inches. That gave me a little play for width and sliding fabric in and out, but it wasn't wasteful. So again, measure your area that you're going to store your fabric in and see how much you have to work with. Use that as a parameter on what size of ruler you're going to use. Now, if you don't have a ruler, what can you use? Well, you can cut cardboard. You can cut cardboard to the size that you need. Just make sure you cut it nice and straight, and that will be a nice, inexpensive way to use this. When I first started my project, I'll have to admit, I'm going to be real here, I had a very messy sewing room. I dealt a lot with lycra fabrics and slinky, slippery fabrics that you can fold until the cows came home, as the saying goes. But as soon as I'd put them on the shelf, it would slip and it would just kind of, you know, falter, and it wouldn't stay put. I have found that this method even works with the lycras. And I wish I had known this years ago when I was skating a ton of skating outfits, and my girls were skating. I had my fabric collection was almost entirely lycra, so it was hard to control. If I'd have known then what I know now, I would have definitely used the bobby pins to hold it in place. Then I could fold it over, and now I don't have any trouble with my slinky, slippery fabrics. It works great for the lining fabrics as well. I don't have any problems with things falling apart on me. I'm able to do this. I use this method for 1 yard on up. I've probably done some yardage, you know, like 8 yards or so that I've actually folded up this way, and it works great. If I have bolts, then I keep it on a bolt, and I will store the bolt that way. But when I get into just yardage, this is the way I like to store it. I know I'm forgetting something that I wanted to mention, but maybe I'll remember it halfway down. You probably do that once in a while yourself. So anyway, we have 4 across. They're all 5. I used my 5-inch ruler, which worked really well, and the bobby pins, and they don't rust. I haven't found any issues with them rusting. So that's how I keep it nice and tidy. Now, a friend years ago, a sewing buddy, mentioned Well, it's easy to get in and out your fabrics because I would just lift up what I needed and pull it all out. And she said, why don't you just use a ruler, and you can use the ruler to slip it on in, and it works really well even if you're trying to use the ruler to slip in and out of the middle. So that's just another little tidbit. Okay, so what happens when you have stuff to store that's under a yard? Well, what I do, because we all get there where we have yardage and then we have stuff that's under a yard, and I showed this briefly last week when some of you asked about it, was I have these Sterilite containers. I know a lot of you use the Sterilite containers, plastic drawers to store things. And what I used to do was I would store my fabric laying flat, you know, flat down from the bottom on up. And it was hard to get to my fabric, get to the piece that I needed. It was hard to see what I had. I was always consequently digging in this drawer to find what I had. And I thought, well, that seems silly because this method really worked. You always want the folded end facing out because that's the neater end, and it allows you to see what you have at a glance. And so I thought, well, why don't I do the same method here? So instead of laying the fabric down, again, I measured the width of my drawer, and this happens to be about 7 inches. So I thought, okay, well, I have a 6-inch ruler. That'll work. So I got out my 6-inch ruler. I wrapped the fabric around that, and I'll take a piece out here. And this is kind of what it looks like. I wrapped it around, and then I put I tucked under the raw edge. I put the bobby pin on the end so it would stay put, and then I folded this in half, and I always put the folded finished edge facing up so that I can see at a glance the colors that I have available. And I'll hold this up so that you can see. I used a little toilet tissue holder as a spacer because I didn't want everything falling over. You can use anything as a spacer, but I just happened to use a toilet tissue roll. And this happens to be my holiday fabrics. And then once I have all my holiday fabrics, again, I sort them by color. These down here at the very bottom are basically fat quarters. So I could fit 2 fat quarters in my drawer. Always put the folded face up so that you can see what's in there, not just stack your fabric on top of each other. On the front, I got a vinyl label, and you can get these vinyl labels at any craft stores. I happen to get this at Hobby Lobby. And then I use a washable chalk marker, and this is by Bistro, B-I-S-T-R-O. It's a chalk marker, and you can just write on the vinyl label, and when you're done, or if you change your mind, you don't want holiday fabric in your tub anymore, you just wash it off and put the new name or new label, what you want to put in here. One of the things when I started all of this is I wanted my collection to be, how do I put this? My sewing room is always evolving. I am continually finding new ways or better ways to store things, organize things, and so for me, I needed a method that I could change, not something that was permanent that I had to toss. So that's what I came up with. These labels work really good, and I like the little chalk markers where I can change the label at any time. So there's my 1 yard or under, and then here's the next drawer down of my cupboard, and this is just your standard fabric sorted by color. So I sort by holiday and then by color. Now going back to my larger pieces or larger cuts of fabric, I did a very similar thing. I sorted all of my top shelf are my holiday fabrics. They're, excuse me, Christmas, Halloween, Valentine's, just anything that's holiday related. That doesn't mean I can't mix in a red from my red collection in with some of my Christmas colors. But these are, definite prints that are holidays. And then down below, I have collections that are by designers. Maybe I got several prints from the same collection that coordinate together. I wanted to keep those items together. So I have my collections by a designer, you know, bunched together. And then down where I get towards the bottom, I have just colors. They're not defined by a particular designer or a collection. They're just maybe various colors, like blacks, all my blacks together, and grays and whites and so on and so forth. Excuse me. So I have found with this method, you can store a whole lot more fabric in the same space than if you were just to take fabric that's folded up neatly but various sizes. If it's various sizes, you're not going to get as much fabric in the same space as if everything is folded up the same size. Now, last week someone mentioned that this takes a lot of time to fold up all your fabric. It doesn't take as much time as you would imagine. I admittedly have a lot of fabric to organize, but I probably set aside about a half hour or so to just fold up fabric, and you can get quite a few pieces done in a half hour. But I didn't try to make it a marathon where I did it all in one weekend or something like that. I just kind of took my time with it and did, you know, a half hour's worth, and that was it for me for that day. And you know, it got done, and I can't remember now exactly how long. I'm thinking maybe a couple of weeks I got it all done, but that way I was still able to do other things. I didn't feel overwhelmed. I just did it in little bites, and as the saying goes, you can eat an elephant one bite at a time if you just take it nice and slow. So that's what I did with this. So the next step is, what do you do with the scraps? It's not under, you know, it's not yardage. It's not a yard or less. I mean, well, obviously it's less than a yard, but now you're getting into the teeny tiny scraps that are great for, excuse me, great for applique work. But how do you store those and keep them from making a big mess in your sewing room? Now, I know a lot of people will put them in baskets by color, or you know, well, baskets by color. I've seen a lot of that done, and I think it looks really cool. For me personally, when I toss scraps in a basket or a bucket, I found that they were kind of wrinkling up, and I was always, you know, as soon as I'd pull them out, I was having to spend a lot of time ironing everything, and I'm not one that likes to do a lot of ironing, or I should say unnecessary ironing. I am a presser. I do enjoy pressing as I'm working on a project. I like to press as I go along, because I think the end product really shows when you press versus when you don't. However, I don't like to just press for the sake of pressing. Has to be a meaning for it for me. So anyway, what I do with my scraps is I have another drawer, and I took it and I labeled it with my vinyl label. And these can be removed or changed out. Just, you can do them however. And I've labeled it scraps. And in there I have several plastic bags, and I put similar colors together. So in this bag, for example, are my yellows to orange. And I try to lay everything flat so that I minimize how much wrinkling is in my scraps, so that I can hopefully just pull it out and use it, or not have to iron it too much before it's ready to do an applique with. And you know, again, I have my pinks or my reds, and they're all in little bags, so I can go through here and get the color I need for an applique rather quickly. I'm not one to mix everything up, I guess, and I'm always looking for a better way to do my scraps, because I would like for them to be upright so I could just, you know, flip through and get to the color instead of digging down to get to the color. But this isn't too bad. It's been working pretty good for me. But if I figure out a way to have them standing up, it might obviously take a different container than this, and it might not. I might figure it out. I'll share that with you. But in the meantime, this is working really well for me. I don't have everything mixed up together, and they stay nice and flat. My pieces are not getting all wrinkled, so I like that about storing my scraps that way. Here's a little container that my bobby pins came in, the big ones that were almost 3 inches. And this is from the Sally's Beauty Supply. Let me see if I can get that in there without the glare. Can you see that? So that is the bobby pin that I used from Sally Beauty Supply. That's here in the U.S. But right here on it says rust resistant. They do have a nice coating on the bobby pin. But like I said, most bobby pins that I've run across to that are today all have a really nice coating on them. Now I have used this method of keeping my fabric organized for the past 9 years. And it is the first time, and I've been sewing all my life, it's the first time that I've been able to have my collection stay looking tidy. And I can pretty much go to my collection and find that piece of fabric that I purchased several years ago and know that I have. I hope you'll give it a try. And it's really an inexpensive way to do it. I remembered now what I was going to say way back when. When I first started this endeavor many years ago, the cardboard or these boards were really popular, and they still are. And they're very nice. They have the boards, and a lot of people use comic boards. And I looked into those first. But with my particular setup, they were not going to work. They weren't the right size to actually go in there. Now the the fabric boards I think would have worked, but by the time I priced them, it was going to be pretty pricey for me to do that with the size collection I have. If you don't have a huge collection, it's not a big investment. But for me, it was going to be a huge investment to get all of those fabric boards. And even the cardboards. I looked at not cardboards, comic board covers. I looked at those because those look really nice too. And I think those work really well as also. But the size wasn't going to work quite right. And this one didn't cost me anything except for some bobby pins, which are dirt cheap. So that's the reason I kind of came up with this method. It's what worked for me, and you can modify it based on the size of the container you have or space that you have to put the fabric on. So that's how I kind of evolved into this method. So I'm going to go over here and look at the computer, and we're going to answer questions if you have any about how I organize my fabric. Excuse me. Darn cold. Okay. Angie said, I did the boards at first too, Bonnie, but I can store more fabric with your method. I love your method. Thanks, Angie. I was headed down the road of doing the fabric boards, like I said before, but it was going to be cost prohibitive for me. So I just thought I'd rather spend that money on fabric than the boards. So I had to come up with something different. Teresa said, where do you get your white cabinet for the folded fabrics behind you? That's an excellent question. I forgot to ask my husband, but I know that he got these at Lowe's. Now, again, it was probably about 9 or 10 years ago. Well, it's been over 9 years ago, but I've seen them there since. So I know they still carry them. They weren't all that expensive. I think they were under $100 per cabinet, enclosed cabinet. But they might be, 100 and a little over by now because it was several years ago. But he always goes to Lowe's for anything that's inside the house that's kind of decorative, and he always goes to Home Depot if it's more of a construction type thing. So that's how I know he got these at Lowe's. And like I said, I've seen him get, I've seen them at the Lowe's home improvement store here in the U.S. As well. So that's where he got those for me. Sandra says, I really need to try your method as mine have not worked. I feel your pain because, for 30 or 40 years, I didn't have a method either. And it was a constant battle. No matter, I was dealing, granted, a lot with Lycra fabric, but even my cottons, it just gets messy, and having everything different sizes, it doesn't want to store well. It's like stuffing and fighting, and things fall over, and it was a mess. So I've been there. I understand. Anna says, I need to look at thread storage since I have sewing, quilting, and embroidery threads now. Maybe we can cover that. I have all my thread out. I know a lot of people say they don't like that because, of possible light damage, damage from the sun or what have you. My thread is not stored near a window, so I don't have that issue, and I can easily dust with, those little dusters that are like magnets. They just, a Swifter, they just pick up any dust really quick and easy. So I don't worry about that, and I use my threads a lot, so I have them on pegboards and on hooks out and about. But it works well for me. Not everybody's the same. Shirley says, what recommendation do you have for polar fleece fabric? Excellent question. I've used this method on every kind of fabric imaginable. I have a little bit of everything. This is not polar fleece, but it's very similar. It's very similar, and I've done the same thing. I've put it in there. You might not want to use bobby pins on something that will squish down and get a permanent indentation on it. But other than that, you can still certainly fold it around your ruler and have it neat and tidy so that it stays that way. So it works on just about everything. I've used it on linens. I've used this method on swimwear. I've used it on sheer chiffon, lining fabrics, cottons, flannels, fleece. I can't imagine it not working on just anything you want to throw at it, because I have. Debbie says, I use the ruler fold method for my fabric too. I love being able to see what I have at a glance. Oh, I love that as well. I sort mine in different patterns, dots and chevrons, solid prints, etc. That's a great tip. That's a really good idea. We all sew a little differently. We all think a little differently. So when you go to organize your fabric, think how you would want to approach it. What makes sense to you, and that's the way you should organize it. I like mine, by color and prints, and yeah, I'll put some dots together, but I don't have that many dots. But if you have a lot of polka dots in your collection, you might want to put those all together because that's how you work. So we're all a little different, and feel free to modify. This is just a springboard to get you to think how you might want to organize your space so that it works more functionally for you. Patty says, yes, thread storage, please. My entire apartment is windows. You'd want to keep your blinds shut. Because with the thread storage, sun can damage your thread. But if you store it, we used to use those little matchbox garages from Walmart. I don't know if Walmart sells them anymore. They used to be fairly inexpensive. And then we would, the little plastic containers, that was great for thread storage. I loved it because you could pick up and go with it to class or what have you. Louise says, I use boards, but running out of room with the boards. Oh no. That's always a scary thought when you start running out of room, even when it is nice and tidy and organized, isn't it? Maybe need to start sewing. That's what I tell myself when I start running out of room for storing my collection. I like to call it a collection, or I like to call it my resource center. I try not to say fabric stash because then it sounds like I need to be on an episode of Hoarders Anonymous. So I like to call my fabric a collection or a resource center, because those give you permission to have a large resource center or a large collection. It's not something that's, that you're hoarding. Let's see. I think that is most... Oh, Edna just popped in. Edna says she lives in a fifth wheeler, so would love ideas for organizing for a fifth wheeler with limited storage. I love embroidery, vinyl, and materials. Edna, this would work. Definitely fold up your fabric. If you're in the fifth wheeler and you just have drawers, measure your drawers, fold the fabric so it'll fit within the drawers, and have the fold facing up so that you can, when you pull out your drawer, you can easily see the fabric that you have available. That'd be my first tip, but definitely get all your fabric folded in the same size so that you can get the most fabric in the tiniest space possible. That would be where I would start, definitely. Dina said, yes, that does sound better to call your fabric a collection rather than a stash. I agree. It's all in, as my youngest daughter would say, it's all in the presentation. She's a piece of work. Karen would like some tips on storing vinyl. I'll have to come up with some for that. Diana said the same thing, storing vinyl. Okay, we're getting some comments about, they want to know about storing vinyl. Okay, well, I think we've answered all the questions you might have. Again, I will post the more detailed video I have on how to actually fold up or the fabric onto a roller and wrap it. I should say, not fold it on a roller. A quick note that I might have forgotten, just in case I did, because we covered a lot here, and I don't want to not cover it in case I didn't. Let me pull out a piece of fabric. Sometimes you want to know how much fabric you have left, and so you've rolled it all up. This was rolled on a 5-inch ruler, and any ruler you use, you would just double the amount. So if you used a 6-inch ruler, it would be 12 inches. If you used a 5-inch ruler like I did, it would be 10 inches. And if you want to know how much fabric you have left, you're going to take and get to the end that has the folds, and you're going to count the folds in toward the center. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You count them on into the center, and say I had 8 folds. That would be 80 inches because it goes on one side and wraps around to the other. Each fold is 10 inches with a 5-inch ruler. Each fold on a 6-inch ruler would be 12 inches. So you multiply on this one, say I had 8, that would be 80 inches, divide by 36, and that's how you could come up with how much yardage you have left on your fabric. So that's just another tip. It's kind of handy to be able to know at a glance without unrolling the whole yardage to know how much you have available to use, because maybe you're looking at a project and it's calling for 2 yards or 3 yards or 4, and you want to know at a glance kind of quickly if you have that or if it's even a possibility to use. So that's another little tip that works really well with the wrap it around a ruler folding method. So I thought I would throw that in there because I don't think I covered that earlier, and I did want to throw that in. Kathy said she looked out at a thrift store one time. They had a bunch of plastic boards with clips, and she had no idea what they were. Price for the lot was $5. I realized what they were, looked them up online, and I had over $300 worth. Wow, Kathy, that is a great find. That is wonderful. It is. But see, some of those fabric boards can get pretty pricey. Okay, well, I think, Patty, math, ugh. Well, get out the calculator. It's on all our phones. You can use the calculator that's on the phone. So another method that I thought of today, had I thought about it 9 years ago, I might have done it, is to, and that's another thing I thought of. See, my mind just zips around. Another reason I came up with the bobby pins, I know you could use straight pins to do the same thing, but I always poke myself with straight pins, so I didn't want to use a straight pin. That was another reason why I came up with bobby pins. So, yeah. But what I was going to say earlier was when you unfurl, when you're just starting and wrapping this fabric up, you can measure then how much yardage you have. Say, okay, I have 5 yards. I'm wrapping this up. Get a little piece of paper, put 5 yards on it, stick it under the bobby pin, and then you would know at a glance what you have there. And then if you used a half a yard, you could just scratch that 5 and make it a 4.5 or what have you. So that might be another way that you could kind of keep up with the yardage. I did not do that in the beginning. I can just count the folds, and I get close enough on the yardage so it doesn't bother me. But if you need a little bit more exact, I think sticking a little note to yourself in there would work well. I think that will cover it for today. I hope you get some ideas from what I have done with my fabric storage. If you have some better tips on how to how to store scraps, I'd love to hear them. We're all ears, and if you have any questions after we go off live, I do check back to answer questions later on. So don't feel like you had to watch this live or you'd miss out on everything, because that's not the case. We do go back and forth after we sign off, so that's not a problem. Everybody's saying thank you guys. I'm so glad you're here, and I really do appreciate you taking some time out of your day to spend with me. I feel very honored that you do that, because I know we're all really busy. So thanks guys for spending a little time with me, sharing ideas and tips, and sharing the love of sewing with one another. So again, feel free to share this video with your friends, and feel free to invite them. And be sure to sign up on our newsletter for sales, new releases, some freebies. We do give out freebies, so if you sign up, you'll get a couple of freebies just for doing that. So until, I wanted to say next Tuesday, which is May 16th, I won't be able to do a Tuesday's tip because I'll be at a conference. So May 16th, we will be skipping our Tuesday's tip. I'm sorry, but I'll be at a conference and I won't be able to escape to do that. So hope to learn some new things. And but again, I'm working on another surprise for you that I think you will really enjoy. We might have a guest. So until then, bye-bye and have a great day.